Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Hope you enjoyed your lunch or are enjoying it as we speak. So I would like to introduce one of our colleagues who is on Zoom. He's head of the design team, and I'll have him introduce further. But the topic right now for next hour or so, he's going to go over the course shell and student orientation in Blackboard. So that actually, as Carrie was going over some content this morning about cognitive overload. These are the great actually practices or best practices to help actually reduce the cognitive overload for students. So that students, when they move from one course to the next course, they are actually finding the information where they're supposed to be. The nomenclature is consistent throughout the course. So it's like students are focusing on learning versus learning where to find things. So that's the goal of this. Sean, we have faculty here, you can probably see from the screen, from business and nursing. So if you can introduce briefly yourself and then take it away.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Caption. So, pleasure to meet everyone virtually. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, as Kashyap mentioned, one of my primary responsibilities is to make sure that you all have kind of the tools and templates and are sort of set up for success as it relates to course shells and templates and things like that, as well as student orientation and things like that. So we'll take a look at that today. These things are currently sort of being kind of finalized. We're working pretty closely with Cameron to just go through and make sure everything is all sort of ready for you. But we'll just we'll take a look at what we have. As Kashyap mentioned, this is the importance of a student orientation, a consistent orientation, and also a consistent course template. Within a program, and even spanning across programs, is really, it's sort of twofold, right? So it's a benefit for the students, obviously, so that they kind of are familiar with the general sort of structure and layout from course to course. They have a familiarity with where all the basic things are within the course. And then they can really concentrate on the specific course content and not necessarily how things are structured and things like where the syllabus might be or where the faculty office is. Again, all those things, if we can just sort of mitigate that part of the learning curve for students, certainly really helpful, right? And then the other piece of it is for you as faculty. Really making sure that the courses are sort of easy to get into and just start developing. You don't need to worry about setting them up from scratch and variability for some of those main kind of constructs that the course is sort of built around. So those are really the you and the students are really kind of the end users for this stuff. So without further ado, let's take a look at the course template. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and feel free to just kind of shout out and stop me if you have any questions as we're going through this. Can y'all see my screen up here?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is what the general layout for the courses will look like. There are this is sort of the course home page, right? There's a banner, of course, that is custom designed and bespoke for your course. We'll have these banners kind of pre-built for you when we get in there and start developing your course. We'll have them all ready for you. We have our graphic design team will go through and kind of create this stuff using our image libraries, and we have a huge sort of repository of imagery to leverage. But if there's something in here that you see you don't like, or maybe you'd like to use an image of your own or something like that, you can just let us know and send it to us, and we can go ahead and get that in there for you. But we'll sort of take the first kind of stab at it just so you have something to kind of get rolling with. The other thing that you'll notice here is the sort of prominent start here on the right side. This and actually everything about the course template is really driven primarily by Quality Matters, the Quality Matters rubric, and specifically Quality Matters version 6. So the things that eventually, you know, as you're done with the course, if you put the course up against the quality matters rubric, a lot of that stuff is really just going to be kind of almost pre-done for you. So you can really just, again, focus on the course content and not worry about making sure that, you know, like I said, a lot of those boxes will already be checked just simply by reviewing the template. I'm going to go ahead and close my email so we don't have chimes throughout that presentation. Okay. So again, I mean, really, this is just, again, sort of set up so you can kind of off and running pretty quickly. So, you know, you've got a start here that links to a getting started section in the left-hand navigation. We've got some quick links to things like the course syllabus, policies, faculty office support. Again, this is all sort of custom designed based on your kind of needs. But generally, this is sort of the footprint that we'll leverage from course to course. The other thing that you'll notice here in the left-hand navigation is there's only one module right now. And that's really just because this is still not finalized. So we're still sort of in the discussions about, you know, making sure that this is all kind of up to where you need it as far as what you need to leverage. But once it's done and once we kind of roll this out for your use, we'll go ahead and duplicate out additional modules here on the left. But you can see there's an announcement section, of course. And if you click on the Getting Started section, just to give you a sense of how this is structured, there's a Getting Started checklist for students kind of for first time, so that they kind of know exactly what to do, where things are. And then we've broken out the sort of sections within Getting Started to really two general folders. So the first folder is really about this course, and then the second folder is more general university policies, tools, resources, right? We've done this, again, this template sort of evolved over the years, and one of the things that we got real feedback from all of our students is that at one point we had all this kind of stuff in the same folder. And really students were like, you know, for the first course, really important to kind of be able to go through policies and tools and things like that. But by the time they're in the third course of the program, they really just want to know about the course specific things. So that's why we kind of tease those out in the About This Course section. And then have university policies, tools, and resources sort of as a separate item. If you click on About This Course, you kind of drill down in here, you'll see there's basically the way that these pages are set up. There's a placeholder here for a video. It's just an image, but it's sort of there for you to create a course introduction video, introduce the course to the students. Of course, we detail out all of the course and module learning objectives. You'll notice that we also then, you know, tie back the module level objectives to the course objectives throughout the entire online classroom. And then there's a content attribution statement. Again, this kind of falls right into the Quality Matters 6 rubric, so that's one of the things that we want to make sure you have. So it's already kind of there for you. We link to the course syllabus, and then there's a faculty office, which is pretty straightforward, right? So contact information, bio. You may choose to put a video in here also if you want to kind of give students a little bit of a background about you. But that's what sort of makes up the About This Course section. The other course folder in Getting Started is University Policies, Tools, and Resources. Now, this one of the things, we're also going to take a look at the student orientation, which also is in development. One of the things that we're going to do is we're really going to kind of shore up synergies between this section and the online orientation course. And what I mean by that, you know, the online orientation course that we'll look at in a bit, it's really meant to be sort of an ongoing resource for students. So instead of having just one sort of small course that students take before they take the first actual course of the program, and then never having access to it again, we've designed the online orientation to really be an ongoing resource. So it would be something that students are enrolled in as a standalone course. They're meant to take it before they get into course 1 of the program. But that course they will have access to throughout the program. And so they can kind of go back if they have questions and things like that. So that's, again, meant to be an ongoing resource. We'll look at that in a little bit. But a lot of the things that we have in here as the University Policies, Tools, and Resources section, a lot of these things are, of course, kind of covered in the online orientation course. And so as we flush out that information and as we kind of build it out and finalize it, we'll make sure that these two resources are sort of synced up. There may be some things in here that we see that maybe won't be there, there may be some additional things. There may be references to the orientation course, right? So again, this is just sort of the starting point. Does that all make sense? Does that sort of overview that make sense for the two resources?
Yes.
Yeah, but what do you mean by the online orientation course?
So Sean, the question is, what do we mean by online orientation course?
Yep. So we have a course and again that we'll look at when we're done with this one, and it's really meant to give the online students kind of an orientation to program, an orientation to online learning strategies, basically giving them all of the foundational information that they're going to need to know in order to successfully complete the program. So much like you would have an orientation in a face-to-face environment, right? This sort of establishes that for the online students.
And
So
as
the
I
idea is that when the student enrolls into the program, they will first take that orientation course.
Yes.
that's the best practice is
optional.
once the students are enrolled, they get an admission, like an acceptance letter. Along with that, they get the username, password, and then the access to this orientation, and which we'll see in later. Sean is going to demo that. So it's a non-credit bearing. So rather than calling it a course, it's a student orientation. It's not really a course, but we use the same kind of look and feel and shell so that they start getting used to of this LMS. learning
It's
LMS.
like a resource.
Right.
But impose a learning contract, I think, would be necessary.
Yeah, and I will not spill beans for Sean. He's going to go over. There's both like learning LMS and as well as some other information in that orientation. So
Yeah,
he'll
we'll take
share.
a deep dive in that.
Yeah.
Okay. Then some of the things that we covered here, obviously, then we've got minimum technical requirements, which is pretty straightforward. There's kind of a built-in browser check. We've also got learning tools. So this is something that, and again, there's some tools in here that likely you're not going to kind of have them in there as sort of where we're getting started. But the idea with the learning tools page, again, it's Equality Matters, best practice, but it's basically not only the LMS, but any third-party software, third-party application that you're going to have the students using, right? And the way that we generally will approach this is we'll sort of set those third-party applications that you might use at a program level, right? So if you're using Turnitin, if you're using Zoom as a video conference solution, I mean we'll sort of pre-build that in here so that you don't have to worry about that as a faculty member. We'll address all those consistent third-party tools. But then if you, as an instructor at the course level, if you're going to add a tool, if there's some sort of simulation that you're going to use or really anything like that, you'll just add it to this page. And this is, again, sort of the resource for the student to know exactly what tools they're going to need to utilize for the course. You'll notice on this page that there's 3 different things for each technology, right? So there's a guide support page, wherever that might go. There's also then links to the privacy policies and the accessibility statements for those technologies. And again, that's a Quality Matters 6 best practice. So we kind of make sure that that's all kind of pre-done for you, so you're not worried about that. Makes sense? The other thing in here, and again, this is really where you're going to start to see some synergies. So it may look a little different by the time we're done with this, but student services and resources. This is a place where we're kind of linked to the library writing center. I mean, really anything that the students might need. And again, this may actually link to the orientation. But that's that section. And then university policies. Again, these are things that will certainly be in the orientation, and we'll make sure that those are all sort of synced up as well. Different kind of privacy statements, policies, things like that. So that's the section for that in the getting started area. The other thing at the end of the getting started, sort of consistently from course to course, we have an introduction discussion. So this is a discussion board where students can introduce themselves to one another, to you as the faculty, vice versa. You guys can kind of get to know each other, and that's sort of the end of this getting started section. If we delve into the module currently, the way it's currently working is we've got a module introduction, which which again, very similar to the course introduction, but just at sort of that more of that micro level. We've got module objectives and how they tie back to the course level objectives. And then we've got what we call a module activities list. And really what this is kind of meant to do, this is really meant to be sort of an advanced organizer for the students. Give them a clear indication at sort of that 30,000 foot view of what they're responsible for during the week and when they're responsible for it. So, you know, what they need to read, what they're going to need to discuss, any kind of assignments they're going to submit. We don't recommend that these are really linked up just for stewardship purposes. It can get kind of messy. But this is just, again, for them to get a snapshot of what they're going to be responsible for. The other thing that you'll notice in the module activities overview is actually how all of these different activities tie back to the specific module level objectives, right? And so again, this may or may not be important for a student. I mean, it probably would be for me, but you know, students may or may not care about that, but accreditors really, I mean, it's a great way to just sort of kind of have all this mapped out so that we can kind of show clear connection to what you're asking students to do to those module level objectives and outcomes. Make sense? Okay. The other thing that's in the module is a placeholder here for lecture materials, right? So of course, lectures take all kinds of different forms and formats, but you know, there's some placeholders in here for lecture material as kind of a placeholder for that. The other thing that you'll notice is the consistent nomenclature. This is something Kashif mentioned at the beginning here. It's just this idea of, you know, really kind of having a clear nomenclature across the course. We have, you know, what the module number is, what the lecture, what the actual resource type is, so it might be lecture materials or discussion or an assignment, the number, if there's multiple assignments, multiple discussions, and then the title. And again, that's just sort of a best practice. It makes things really nice and neat and easy to navigate in the grade book. And you can kind of see anything, any page from the course and know exactly kind of where it is within the context of the course itself. So that's another recommendation that we have. And the discussion and assignment pages, you'll notice that the discussions, assignment pages are sort of set up so that there's a consistent kind of layout. Again, all the discussions, all the assignments, they're going to vary greatly from course to course. One of the things that we really don't want to have is what we would call, you know, cookie cutter courses. We want to make sure that the courses are different enough that they're going to be, you know, sort of have your personal sort of touch on them and really kind of give the students that varied experience. But again, just kind of giving that sort of scaffold about how the pages are sort of designed and the iconography that we use and things like that. So that's one of the things. There's a link here in case you have a file that you'd like to leverage for the discussion or the assignment or anything like that. So that's in here too. If you don't need them, certainly just get rid of things, but it's kind of there just to give you a jumping off. You'll notice also that the assignment page is set up in a very similar way. Just kind of giving you that sort of structure to get started. And then at the end of the module, there's a module summary. So again, it's best practice. We recommend that there's at least something here. You know, whether it's something that you type up as you're developing the course before it goes live, to just kind of wrap up what they learned this week, and tee up what they're going to learn next week, tie it all together. You know, some faculty will choose to kind of make videos and record videos maybe at the end of the week, maybe on day 6 or so, and just sort of reference some of the things that you saw in the assignments and just kind of make it a little bit more sort of fresh and real time. But again, just some sort of module summary is important. And so that's kind of how that basic module is set up. Any questions about any of that?
Yeah, well, I actually would like to step back. And is this Blackboard or is it going to be embedded in Blackboard?
Question is
Blackboard. This course is in Blackboard.
Yep.
So, for instance, the tab that we have on the left, which are the discussion or assignment and everything. So, if, for example, the discussion is inserted within that platform, the students can access it by clicking on the left-hand side tab as well.
Did you hear the question?
Would you mind repeating that? I was kind of
Yeah. So the faculty has a question that if the content is on the main page, the discussion question for student, can they access to that discussion question from the left nav?
They can. So here, if you click on discussions, these are all the discussions in the course. So there's currently only one in each module. again, just to sort of get things started, but they would all be here. And also, if you notice, because of the nomenclature that we're using, it's clear where these discussions are located within the context of the actual course itself.
The same interface.
Yes.
Would the faculty for a given course all have the same course menu?
So the idea is that there's a basic structure, right? They're not going to necessarily have this. I mean, you can certainly add to this, and the expectation is that you would, right? The expectation is that the courses will be certainly different. But again, that basic scaffolding is sort of expected to be consistent throughout the program. But again, like I said, if you think about it as kind of a house, I mean, it's really kind of the layout of kind of the sort of lumber and where things are. But your house is going to be completely different as you kind of add things to it. It's really that general scaffolding.
In other words, if there are one course may have like one discussion question in every other module. Another course may have like two questions in every module. Depending on actually faculty and then content subject matter, you can have a number of different ways you can have that. As long as you call it discussion, if it's a discussion, always, and use the same tool. So then students, they don't have to worry about then where to find it and how to address that.
So they will have the same tabs.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
But the content of the tabs
Absolutely.
always can be different.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Correct.
Some more questions, Sean?
So another faculty also earlier asked about the resources from our resources such as our business publishing, music courses and cases and articles and simulations. Obviously for those, the students really have to get out of this platform and then come back to that. And I see, how this is, nicely designed in a way that students kind of stay in one shell, but for those kind of external resources, they really have to get out of this platform. And because of the copyright and all of those kinds of things, they really have to be out of this platform and get what is assigned to them and then get back to it. Is there anything that you can add to that, or is there any way to do it better than what comes in our mind at least?
Sean, did you hear the question?
Yeah, can you please restate it?
Yeah. So the question is, if there is a third party, like a publisher content, how it interface with this template?
Yeah, great question. So, depending on the publisher's sort of access level with Blackboard, I mean, if there are certain publishing resources that really kind of integrate pretty seamlessly. Others, you will have to go out to somewhere else outside of the course to interact with the content. And either way is fine. I think one of the things that we want to make sure is just really level setting the expectation for the student that it's going to work the way that it works, right? So for example, if there is some sort of third party application publisher element that you need to go to and students are going to leave this course to go into it, you would just make sure, you can do it in a couple different places, but certainly in learning tools you'll talk about it, right? So certainly in learning tools, there would be, this is McGraw-Hill Connect or whatever you might be leveraging, right? You'll talk to them about it, but you could also explain to them pretty clearly how it's going to work, and you may even, and likely if it's that complex, if it's really something they're going to interact with every week and they know they're going to be going somewhere else, you could and should, frankly, explain that, not necessarily in the module introduction, but in the course introduction, right? In the course overview about this course, you'll explain to them that, at the beginning of every module, you're going to go out to this particular website, you might want to download, whatever you might need in order to make it work. And just, again, make it expectable and just level set their expectations on how they're going to interact.
And we could talk with the actual providers, like the actual external ones. A lot of them have really upped their game in terms of their LTI compatibility as well. So a lot of the tools that we will recommend are fairly seamless.
So LTI will help actually with the single sign-on. So students, they can click on something on this page and then they don't have to sign on in the publisher site. So that's what Kerry was referring to. But I think the main point, as Sean was saying as well, is that students, they will come in, each and every course, they get a similar experience, at least at the course level, course introduction level. And then from there, the study that's in module, if there are study or resources that are outside, they're linked from within that, so that they come to this course and then they go out to other resources, which will be the case for even non-publisher too. With OER session that we have tomorrow or this afternoon, we will be covering some of the content over there as well. So that's also, they will be going out. So the important point is that student, they have experience the structure of this course so that they don't have to worry about, okay, where do I turn in my assignments or where do I do my discussions?
For cognitive load purposes.
Do you have a question?
I had a question. Let's say you're getting outside resources like Up to Date or YouTube or what have you, and you want to embed it in your class. And does it have to be closed caption? Do you do that already for the faculty, or we have to get it, make sure that it is closed caption?
So the question is about closed captioning with external videos, right? And actually the question I think alludes to a bigger topic, which is really that of ADA compliance, right?
Yeah.
So one thing that you should know about this course template is when it comes to you, it will be fully compliant. It will have all of the requisite sort of alt tags and coding, so that everything in the template, when it gets in front of you, it is 100% ADA compliant. Now, obviously, you're going to add to it. You're going to make things. You're going to link to things. And at that point, it's the responsibility is on you as a faculty member to make sure that the things that you're linking to, things that you're embedding, follow that same sort of level of compliance, right?
Something to that.
For example,
Should
those kind of
be
deals.
on campus.
Sean,
Yeah,
we have an internal a university instructional designer here who has some comment to add.
Well, the Center for Teaching with Technology will help you with issues of that sort. Okay. So if you need closed captioning, we'll help you with that. If you need help using their interface, we can help you with that. We're the people who are happy to work with you on these issues.
So your WP instructional designer sounds like you'll be able to help with
Because we
those
use a
things.
lot of videos
Yeah.
and hands-on stuff in nursing,
Sure,
and it's very important that we have that.
absolutely.
And we can teach you how to CC it itself,
Exactly.
which is really easy. Yeah.
I was going to just say that there are some resources that we have as well, guidance documents that will help you to do it on your own as well. Yeah. Yes.
Yes, I would like Sean to give us more details. Is this shell that he's building and giving to us is on top of Blackboard or integrated within Blackboard, or they're just parallel and they are connected?
So question, Sean, is this template within Blackboard on top of it? But yeah, simple question. Maybe Gammon, you may be able to answer this question too. Where does this shell reside, in other words?
So we have it, we just have the one shell in Blackboard. And we have it, we're working on the data integrations. So shells will be created, and then I will rely on Robert and his group to make sure the template gets into those courses. Is that, or how would that work?
Is it hosted at WPU?
Yes. Yes.
Well, we'll have to work with them to get it out. We work with your team to get the.
So, yes. So Sean, you can speak to that as well. I think the question is, where does this shell currently reside? And I believe, Sean, you added to the WP Online's instance already, or not yet?
Yes, it is in your instance. And just to take it a level deeper, just so you're aware. So this is on your LMS. The imagery that we're leveraging for things like the icons, again, just at that sort of root level, those are actually on an AWS server. And so those are served up that way. And we do that for, I mean, a multitude of different reasons, but, you know, I mean, one of them is just if they need to be updated or tweaked, you know, we can do that once and then we'll sort of waterfall all the courses. But the course itself is in your instance, any kind of visuals or images or anything that you would upload to the course would then of course be in the course itself. So really the only thing that's kind of hosted elsewhere are really those kind of root images that are just kind of these, you know, different visuals that are just sort of leveraged across all of the courses themselves.
Does it help?
Thanks.
Excellent. Yes.
Some of the graduate courses.
Another question, I'm sorry,
Well,
Sean.
I'm not sure who it's for, but some of the graduate courses are currently on ground online.
Okay.
So the shell, the AP shell, I'm going to call it for now. How are we going to distinguish the faculty? I hope the same faculty is not teaching both at the same time, but who knows? But that's going to be something that if you hadn't thought about or.
Well, the shells that you're creating here online are going to look very different than this. For example, there's not going to be a huge start here.
No, correct.
On your shells. These shells are going to be very identifiable. They create these shells in order to be identifiable. So I don't think there's going to be a difficulty distinguishing between the homemade shells and these shells.
So Sean, do you have a recommendation on any kind of like a file naming or some kind to distinguish between their on-campus online hybrid course versus this accelerated online course?
I mean, I don't really have a recommendation. I guess my recommendation would be whatever makes the most sense for you guys. I think that's internal discussions that y'all can have. I mean, whatever makes sense.
Yeah. So there could be some distinguishing kind of like a nomenclature of your file name or course, how it shows. We strongly recommend not to use the word AP.
Is it intrusive, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't use AP. I mean, it's fine to have it in this template here, but like I wouldn't put it in the course itself, obviously.
We'll find.
All right, Robert, instructional designer, he's saying that they will figure this out.
Okay.
Okay. Good. Any other questions for Sean? Oh yeah, there are a couple more questions, Sean.
Great.
Are you guys prescribing a new format for syllabus? Our current syllabi right now include the resources and the policies, and you already have a different tab for that.
So the question.
We don't really have a.
Go ahead,
We don't
Sean.
really have a recommendation per se for the syllabus, and if you have a syllabus that you're using that you want to continue to leverage, it's totally fine. One of the things to think about, because again, this is sort of kind of what we're in discussions about, kind of nailing down. But you know, one of the things to think about is when you look at a course template like this, and we're really sort of establishing kind of a baseline of where things are. You know, some partners choose to use this opportunity if they can, if they're not sort of beholden by some sort of other sort of contract outside of the course. But you know, to sort of use the opportunity to make their syllabus a little bit more lean, and actually take some of those things that are boilerplate content that are in every single syllabus, and maybe move it to the course itself, so that the syllabus then becomes more of a lean document. It's really up to you, and it's really up to your needs at the university and program level. We can certainly provide you with, you know, visual templates to kind of polish it up, but whatever you want. I mean, it's really whatever works best for you.
If I may add, Sean, that's important, and it's up to university to use. Usually, what provost has a template that is also by program as well. Sometimes some accrediting bodies, they have certain requirements to be included in syllabus. So consider all those things, and if you need help, as Sean said, we do have templates of syllabi where different components and elements could be included. We can provide that, but our recommendation is actually within a program at least have a consistent syllabus template, so that students, they know actually, okay, on page 3 I'm going to always find this information.
Keep in mind, it's good to, again, pull the policies and that kind of thing out. One of the reasons we recommend that is because, like I reviewed one program one time, and no joke, every single syllabus the policies were all different. Even though they were university level policies, they were all written slightly differently. And that's just kind of what happens. Somebody comes along and says, that's not proper grammar, or says, I don't like that word, and they just inadvertently change it, or something comes down from higher up that you're supposed to change it, someone forgets. So that's the good thing about having the policies here. You never have to worry about that. So that's one reason why I recommend those being pulled out and just left in here. And then this goes to a static page. So if they update,
Single
they just
source.
update automatically. So I take them out of the syllabus if I were you.
And to your point, Carrie, you know, to that end, one of the things that you'll notice is that we, when we actually do reference the policies, whether it's here or if it's in the orientation, we don't actually state the policies here. I mean, we kind of give sort of a brief kind of recommend there's sort of a brief sentence or two that just sort of tease up what the policy's about. But at the actual policy itself, our recommendation is that this just links to some sort of internal website that you guys sort of house and has that policy on it. So you can have multiple resources then referencing that one policy on that one page, and then as things get updated, it's all everybody's sort of singing from the same song sheet, as it were.
And then that's one less thing you have to worry about, one less thing faculty have to worry about. You're all on the same page. It just automatically gets updated. Way better.
I wanted to see if I understand your style here, is that the modules really are corresponding to weeks.
Correct.
And then content is not necessarily, modules are not content, they're temporal, and then the content can go across several modules.
Absolutely.
And, okay, because it seems obvious, but it's like, but I want to find out for make sure.
Did you hear the question, Sean?
Yeah, so that content can span several modules, of course, right? I mean, we certainly there are cases where there's threaded assignments throughout, you know, that students kind of add to throughout each week, and again, the structure of the week is really just to sort of format it so that the students kind of have that schedule, right?
Any other questions? Good.
Great. Awesome questions, by the way. Nice job. I'm going to turn editing off so you can see a hidden module that's in here. This is faculty resources. Just so you know that it's here and you know what it is. If you open this up again, this is hidden from students, of course, but this is a place where you can kind of get access to all of the different visuals that we use to make the template. So there's things like call-outs and the sort of click to open buttons. It's really a place that if you wanted to build from scratch, if you wanted to just kind of grab things, you certainly could, or if you happen to delete something that you didn't want to, everything is in here. The other thing that you'll find in here is they're actual ADA compliant tables. You'll notice that we don't leverage we don't use any tables in the actual template itself, simply because they're just sort of kind of problematic. I mean, as far as it relates to ADA compliance, it's really sort of tricky to make sure that you get them so that they're at the point where they can be kind of read by a screen reader. These examples of the tables in here are ADA compliant, so they've got tags on, you know, columns and rows and things like that. So if you need to grab them, you certainly can. The other thing about these particular tables is they're all sort of fluid. So you know, if you want to leverage these to kind of add your content to, that's another reason that the tables become sort of problematic sometimes. But they are here in case you need them. We have a full list of all of the custom iconography and page headings. So in case you want to grab any of those. Template files, we talked a little bit about a syllabus template file, but even just a Word doc template we can create for you. We can create PowerPoint if there's a need for it. Certainly, we can do it. PowerPoint templates is another thing that we'll create for you if needed. And again, of course, you have PowerPoint templates that are branded for your university. But kind of one of the things that we can create is really a PowerPoint deck that's kind of made to be kind of the building block of an online video, right? So, you know, it's in 16:9 format, it's got HD graphics, it's really based on you for you to kind of import your presentations into and then record so that you can kind of create online videos. And then also any kind of video templates that you might need to help with that. And then lastly, there's a list of all of the banners. Of course, there's only one in here at moment, but this is where you would find your banner for your particular course, and just copy and paste it.
This is also a good place if you have, for example, your course maps. You can save them there, and that way, if a course gets updated, you also update the course map. It's good, especially if you have like an adjunct faculty or someone who hasn't taught the class before. Looking at the course map, which we'll talk a little bit more later, it's just the blueprint for your course. It can give you a holistic view of what's in this course, you know, high level versus having to go into each individual item to kind of get a gist of what the course is about. I've also seen groups put the program map in there as well, so that faculty can understand where their course fits within the program as well. So a bit of an understanding of what kinds of things you need to cover, etc.
Carrie, I'm not too sure if I got it. So this is hidden to the students. This
Correct.
is what only.
Yeah, this is faculty view only. Yeah, it's a little spot where you can leave stuff for faculty. I've also seen it where, let's say you had one faculty member who is the developer, but then other faculty who teach it. Sometimes they'll write up a little explanation or something like that, you know, especially if it's something more complicated. This is what I wanted to do. This is what I wanted to achieve. This is why I did what I did. So the idea being that even if you decide to change it, you understood where they were going with it the first time. So again, there's different options, but this could be shared then with any faculty who are going to teach it.
One thing that I want to make sure I didn't get it wrong. So in the policy section, you're suggesting that we have a universal policy section so that the student access the same. But then my understanding was that that link is within each course. And so for instance, for participation, let's say, you know, maybe a lecturer doesn't want to have a discussion, doesn't have just anything such as participation, then the students will see the same thing, which might not necessarily apply to that particular course.
Those are only universal ones that are put there?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think that's the difference, right? So you might have course level policies, and that would be sort of in here as a separate thing. Like we're really just talking about the university level policies.
Yeah, like you know, thou shalt not plagiarize. Those kind of ones, you know.
I want to be conscious of time here because I know we have you guys for about 15 more minutes, and I would like to at least give you an overview of the orientation so you know kind of what it's all about. But certainly happy to continue.
Sean, one more question.
As we're building this, and we're building basically a database of information, are we looking at using AI in terms of being able to have a query from a student looking for information that might have been given in a lecture or something, and they get maybe back an answer with a QR code that leads them directly to that information?
That's a great idea. Did you hear the question?
Can you repeat, please?
Yeah, I don't know if I'll do justice repeating the question, but but it's related to AI, using artificial intelligence in the course, so that if there are certain aspect of the courses, students can query on the content, and they can see certain content, which is great, aspirational. I think that's a wonderful thing to do. At this point, I'll have Gavin and the instructional designers speak to that as well. But I think at this point, it's getting these courses online, designed so that it's that probably it will be the next step down the road.
Or 4
I don't
or
know.
5 down the road.
Well, but I thought if you're building a database, it's always better to build it as part of the foundation.
At one of my past jobs, we did have that. We had a proprietary system where each and every task level, learning objective level, everything was tied, so students can actually search for critical thinking theory. And then all the tasks and resources about that would show up, and then they can pick and choose.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely. I think this is doable, but I think the scope right now is just to get these courses.
I just think it
online.
would be a differentiator for us as a school. to be able to
Absolutely.
compete in the market.
That's exciting. Yeah. Any other questions, comments? All right, Sean, we can go to the orientation now.
Okay, great. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. Like I said, feel free to just shout out if you need to stop. But this is what the online student orientation currently sort of looks like. I'm gonna dig down into one of these course pages because there's a visual on here that I'd like to reference, which is not. So the way that this course is set up, there are 6 modules, and with the potential of a 7th module if you need it. But basically, it's set up so that the first 4 modules are what we would call an initial resource. So these are the things that students are going to need when they first log in, or they first get their welcome letter. They haven't taken a course yet, right? These are things like, basic first steps, online expectations, learning strategies, exploring the learning management system, all these things that students need to know before they kind of get into the actual course itself. Module 5 and Module 6, they're what we would consider an ongoing resource. So again, the idea is that they've enrolled in this course, for lack of a better term, and they would keep enrollment throughout the program. So they could always come back to Modules 5 and Module 6 for specific things that they need to know about policies and program information, support services, right? All of those different things. So that's kind of the idea. That's sort of the holistic idea of what this is meant to be. So it's not just an orientation course per se. It's really an ongoing resource for the students. That's how it's set up. The way in which, at the program level, because again, this is meant to be kind of set, almost set and forget at the program level, right? But at the program level, there's certain things that you'll need to kind of focus on to update to get it to the point where you can get it in front of students. But so again, you can notice that the page, the course itself, is really set up to kind of mimic the template. There's a getting started checklist. We're assuming that this is the first time that students have ever been in the course, or been in the LMS. So again, we're kind of just easing them into it. We're letting them know that their actual courses will kind of navigate the same way. But this one, there's a lot of things that they're not going to have to worry about in this particular course. First steps, some of the things that we give them. Of course, there's a minimum tech requirement. And again, you can see here there's some overlaps and some similarities between the course template. Again, these are things that we'll sort of flesh out over the next couple of weeks. But we give them sort of ways to stay connected to the university. There's a place here where we can link to the university calendar, any kind of social media channels that you might want to do. Again, really the idea here is that we're bridging the gap between the online students and the face-to-face students, in giving them that connection to campus. If there's a university newspaper or newsletter that we want to link to, that's in here. We ask them to go ahead and take a selfie with a school logo or a mascot on their screen, and so that they can upload that as their profile picture in the LMS. Again, really just kind of making that connection to on campus. The other thing that's important to just note about this orientation is we've got what we're calling a success portfolio. Really, this is a place when the students see this icon, these are places where they can download and either print and store in an actual physical folder or store in a digital folder on their computer. But these are things that they're going to kind of collect along the way. Really kind of to try to make this more engaging. And it might be anything, from a goals sheet that they'll fill out for themselves to phone numbers and things like that they might need in case of a technology emergency, right? Really anything that they kind of collect as they go through this course. It's designed, by design, it's a low-tech portfolio. We're not leveraging any of the learning management system for it. Again, just because this is the first time they're presumably that they're in the learning management system. So we really don't want to overwhelm them with that. At the end of every module, there's built-out knowledge check questions, anywhere from 5 to 6 questions, that are tied directly to the objectives for that particular module. Right now, currently, there's no rules associated with the knowledge checks. They're just sort of there. So you can kind of make this whatever you want at the program level. If you want them to have to get 100% after the first module to move on to the next, you can certainly set that. Currently though, they're just the questions that are in there. Module 2 is all about online expectations. There's videos in here that gives students sort of a sense of at sort of the highest level, what it's like to be a week in the life of the online student. Just play this for a second.
This is what it's like to be a student in an online program, where we typically spend our time and how we interact with professors and classmates.
I won't let that go too terribly long, but this is we've got FAQs in here. We've created a whole bunch of sort of little animated video shorts about things like real kind of basic things: what a syllabus is, what's a rubric, discussion etiquette, all these different things that traditionally universities kind of link out to existing resources that maybe other universities have created. We kind of created them all in-house so that there's just sort of this ecosystem that we're not really relying on other universities' things. And they're just kind of meant to be kind of light. I'll give you an example of the syllabus.
At the beginning of your course, your professor will provide you with a syllabus. A syllabus is a contract between you and your professor. Syllabus for your course may vary in length, but all syllabi are designed to let you know how the course is structured and what's expected of you as a student. It's a pretty big deal.
Okay. So again, these are they're pretty general. We take a closer look at the syllabus. You can go ahead and swap these kind of general images out with your actual syllabus from your program. This is all kind of just again set up so that you can kind of just leverage this kind of as is. When we talk about online course activities, all the different ways that they'll interact with content. We talk about netiquette, we talk about plagiarism. One of the things that you'll notice in this particular example here about plagiarism, we're sort of talking about what it is, but we're not really getting into the actual policies here. Policies would be in sort of module 5, right? Because module 5 and module 6 are very, very customized to the university and the program itself. These are really, again, just sort of meant to be very general, sort of off the shelf. You can just kind of use them as is. Here, we talk about the writing process, and there's a success portfolio for that, and then a knowledge check at the end. Again, so module 2 and module 3, which is online learning strategies, they're really meant just, again, kind of set it, forget it. You can just use them as is. You can certainly add to them if you want, take things out, move things around. This is your resource to do as you want to make it work for your program. But like I said, all these things are in here. They're sort of meant to be generic enough that they'll apply to all online students. There's a section in here about time management, a time management resource that they can download and just sort of fill out their hours in their week and figure out where they can kind of use some different, leverage some time from other things. Talk about flexibility in the study area. There's tips on studying with children in the house, reading strategies, right? There's videos about discussion board etiquette, test preparation. So that's module 2, module 3. Module 4 is specific to the LMS. So it starts out kind of general. There's some general Blackboard things, how to update profile, notification preferences, right? And then at the end of this, there's places for university-specific LMS features. And these are things that we're working pretty closely with Gammon to go through and kind of get these things kind of built out so that when you get this at your program level, this stuff will be completed for you. You really don't need to worry about that. The one thing that you'll need to work on at the program level, if I go back into kind of rush through this, I didn't spend time to talk about this, but if you look at the getting started section, I'm sorry, module 1 rather, there's actually a place in here where we welcome the students to the course itself, as well as, I don't know, Gammon, maybe this got, oh, here it is, I'm sorry. Yeah, so there's a place in here where we introduce the students to the online orientation. There's also a place in here where we welcome the students to the university. And then there's a video that welcome them to the actual program itself. So this program video would be something that you would likely want to kind of record just to kind of introduce the students to your program. And then really quickly, I know I'm rushing through this, I want to make sure that I wrap this up on time. Module 5 and Module 6 are very specific to the university and the program itself, right? So Module 5 is university support services. We tell the students to go ahead and print out these websites and kind of save them to their success portfolio. These are the kind of things that we talk about that we kind of see at the university level, links to things like financial aid and counseling, tech support, right? All these different things will link to the appropriate sections for the students. And then Module 6 is really about university policies, program information, right? So these are things like FERPA and enrollment, tuition, all these placeholders are in here, so they just kind of link to the appropriate spot. And then at the end of Module 6, there's a place here for program information. And it's a little deceiving because this is only kind of one little slot. But I mean, when this is done, this will be a whole host of information about the program. Right? It's whatever you want to convey to the students. And if need be, particularly for like the nursing programs, there might be a lot of information, so much so that we might want to pull that out and have it as a Module 7
And I've already developed, especially for NP programs, nurse practitioner programs, where there's a lot of stuff regarding, you better start finding a clinical now. Those kind of things already kind of built into that, so we can tailor that stuff to your experiences and programs specifically.
Yes. I've got a couple of questions.
You have a couple of questions, Sean?
Who will make decisions, what resources and what policies will get in there that would be used for across the board for all colleges?
So the question is who is part of that team who decides that?
Right.
Yeah. So Gammon, we've been working with Gammon and your program leads.
We're working with the program leads, of course, for the program-specific information. Jonathan and I are working on the other pieces about the policies and so forth.
Okay.
The university-wide.
Perfect. So at least we will have input, Gammon, right?
Yes.
Okay. My second question, it says portfolio. Can we individualize that wherein the first course in nursing, for example, RN-to-BSN, we could link it already to our program objectives because the final course requires them to make a portfolio. So that at the end, they will not be hurrying up and try to attach their, papers that met those objectives. They would be putting that as they finish a course. Does that work?
So you're giving students a heads up.
Right.
You want to give them. So as Sean said, it could be actually even a program-specific module.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or within the information about program there.
Okay.
You can give them, okay, you need to have a preceptor or you need to have a site. That's true for education folks as well. That you want to give them a heads up. Any materials that take long time to get, those kind of things, that can all go in there.
But you can also, in the specific classes, a lot of the time, depending on which e-portfolio you're using, if you're using the one that's built into the LMS, the actual assignment, there's usually a checkbox or link in there when you're creating the assignment that'll send that directly over as well.
Yep. And I would also, if it's something like that, like if there's something so integral to the program, right? Like for example, if there's a portfolio that they're going to be building throughout the program, it's kind of the backbone of what the program is. Certainly, it's going to be in the program information section for sure. But the other place that you would likely want to cover that is really in this sort of introduction, where in this video where you're introducing them to the program, you could certainly talk about it in this video. You could even add visuals like below it, right? I mean, you can add to this. Again, this is much like the course template, where it's sort of the starting point, but you can add to it as much as you need. That's really the idea, and the beauty of it, because this course may look very, very different, and it will look very different from program to program, but there will also be some very, very sort of structured similarities.
Good question. Yes, one more question.
Sure.
I just want to make sure that it's clear about the policies of cheating. I taught a very different online course a few times, and I've had students that think that like check.org is not a form of cheating. And I'm for these websites where you ask the questions and they pay to get the answers. There's lots of websites like that. I just want to make sure that policy is clearly defined across the whole university.
That's going to be largely a university discussion that will probably need to occur, so we would need to probably defer to Gammon and the whole provost team, because that would be something that would have to be changed at the university level.
Except
There,
Well, I know
There's a
that I've been
section-
in places where we wanted to very specifically call out self-plagiarism as well, you know, so self-plagiarism, buying stuff, any of those kind of things. But again, ultimately, those kind of policies are usually at the university level, so.
any other question for Sean?
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you so much, Sean.
All right, guys.
Take
Thanks
care.
again.
Building the best online course. What is the best online course?
They don't want me to go.
Question. There's no gift. What do you mean by a best online course?
No.
Interactive.
Be sure to
One that somebody
navigate.
participates in,
One,
learns from, and learns from.
learn, participate. Can you say
Interactive.
interactive,
Building communities.
building communities. So, talk a little bit more about why you want to make it interactive, why you want to make it engaging, why you want to make this course.
To encode long-term knowledge.
She gets another gift.
I know.
Somebody listen.
I need money.
Help students
Yeah, right.
learn. Yeah. So that actually is your like a student success definition is the student they come, they learn, and they retain. They persist throughout the program. And what are some of the characteristics, the high-level characteristics? Are course sequence and workload. That's like an encoding as well. We heard earlier Carrie presented and shared with you information about the workload, student workload. If it's too much work, students are going to not have a good student success. If it's too little, that's also a problem.
Then you feel like you're getting gypped for it and paid for, right?
And that adds to dissatisfaction. With well-designed course, and we will go into that a little bit more about well-designed course. We have Quality Matters, which is again an industry standard for quality online courses. And there are other standards as well. We'll share that with you. Perceived easy use of course and platform. Do you see a connection between this point and what we just saw from Sean? What is it?
It's very easy to access and understand the icons and how to navigate your course.
Excellent. Easy to understand the course. Icons are there, iconography is helping you to understand where things are. So it's perception as well. First time I was an online learner, millions ago.
Before the internet.
Yes.
They had online now?
Exactly. And that time, I was afraid. And believe me, most of the students are afraid of online. And if we can help them ease it, that actually helps with student satisfaction and retention. And instructor interface and interaction and presence. And we talked about earlier the engagement, the interactivity. And what do we mean by faculty presence?
Participation in discussions.
Participation in discussion.
Availability.
Availability.
Responsiveness.
Responsiveness or response. That's good. Excellent.
I love this comic that I have on one of this, and we've seen it sometimes with faculty at other institutions as well, where sometimes people will assume that when it's an online course, I create it, set it, and forget it, and I don't ever actually have to engage with the students. But needless to say, we want that to continue. They want to engage with you. They want to learn from you, and that's one of the major satisfiers. Is we see that again and again in student end of course surveys as well. They want to hear from you. They want your stories.
Timely responses.
It is. Immediacy is a big factor in student success. How soon you provide feedback to students.
Informative responses.
I'm sorry?
Because you could be responding good, thank you, type of thing.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, having
Substantive, yeah.
having the faculty be real more than, somebody that's just out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Reaching out to
Yeah,
a
providing
missing student
active.
in action.
Reaching out to missing students in action. That's very
Because
important.
you have the stats, right? So-
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So how do you find out actually who are missing?
Again,
Excellent. You can go in your Blackboard and then look at actually which students have posted and not posted, or fill in assignment or not. Great. Excellent. Great. All right. As a faculty, where do we start with our courses? How many of you have already designed online course? Excellent. Are those fully online or hybrid? How many are fully online? Excellent. That's great. Excellent. So where do we start? When we start thinking about, okay, I want to start designing a course.
The end objective.
End in mind and goal. Okay. What does that mean? Outcome. Outcomes that I want. Student learning outcomes. How do you decide those?
Based on national standards.
Based on national standards. What else?
curriculum,
Accreditation. Program outcomes. Excellent. Wonderful. So what else? After you have identified end goal, your learning outcomes for course, what happens next? Syllabus design. What does that include? Everything. All right. Do you start actually building it in LMS?
No.
Okay. Okay. That's great. So, I'll share my story. My undergrad is in fine arts. I was a painter. Ages ago. I have done that as well.
One of his undergrads, he's got a bunch.
I've done journalism as well, but when I was doing that art class, I went to a school where they had architecture as well, students. So I always got fascinated with architecture students, when they were doing their maths. They're doing a blueprint for any building. I always thought, why you spend that much time? And they were spending so much time on those blueprints, on like a millimeter, like each and every detail in that blueprint. My question always had been like, why are you spending that much time on this piece of paper when you are actually building? Eventually, it's going to be building a house or some other building. So that's what they helped me understand, that if we actually have this blueprint figured out, the construction would go smoothly. It will actually at least have what we actually want our client to do, and we have actually figured that out on. So that actually helped me to understand actually, oh yeah, the blueprint. Isn't that planning? Isn't that actually really thinking about actually before I get my hands into building stuff? Just actually start thinking about it. So how many of you can relate to that kind of like doing a map or a blueprint? And analogy between those two, because have you done actually build a home or any renovation project or like a bathroom, fixing a bathroom? What does that? How do you do that? Where do you start?
You have to have some money first.
Money, resources, yeah. You list resources in your budget. Space. Blueprint, planning, where that thing's gonna be, what it's gonna look like.
What do you want to use for certain items?
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. So you got an idea there how it works. Let me share a video real quick here.
You don't get this opportunity much in life, to be able to have such a hands-on approach. And that is what makes it special to build your own home. That's why it's so great to be doing what we're doing.
On this episode of Building My Dream Home, Zach begins his journey towards building his custom, one-of-a-kind home. We'll take you behind the scenes of Golden Eagle log and timber homes and show you how the building process begins. Join us as this picturesque lot is transformed from dream to reality.
So, as you watch this, how actually it starts with planning it, and we discuss that. Think about actually if you have thought about or have worked on designing a home or a project or an extension within your home, and what it looks like, and have you ever imagined actually building that and renovating, and what are the steps? What are some of the kinds of things that you would be thinking about? If you can pair up and discuss that with your partner next to you for about 3 minutes, and come up with like 3 to 5 kind of steps.
What are we discussing?
So you're building a home.
Building a tree house.
We're not talking about building stores yet. All right. So let's get back and can I hear like what do you do?
Get permits.
Permits. Okay. First. All right.
Not first. What's that?
After you have to have the
That's why we need to around.
So I heard the word permit, and what does that mean? Like permit, you get permit because of some kind of like a regulation that you have to follow. Remember that. We'll come back to this.
You have to buy the land from a contractor, so he will take care of it.
Figure out what you want.
The location, the budget for you.
Budget as well.
You
Yes.
need the vision, you need the vision.
Vision. Yes. Vision, budget, and we have the permit.
Our 3 items are first concept, the concept like a spacious, large, sunny concept. And second, and the values, like is it a greenhouse, for instance, or not. And number 3 is the logical structure of the place.
Excellent.
Later we worry about permit.
Yeah, logical structure of the place. You can feel actually how you will be experiencing that space. And there was one I heard actually that you can subcontract, send it to someone else who can build it for you. That's also an option.
And we need a celebration party when it's built.
Celebrate when it's built. All right.
So you have enough money to celebrate.
Yes.
You might lose them.
Just go back when you were talking about blueprints.
Yes.
Just to share, I was an engineer. That's where I started. And when we did our learned engineering drawings, the first class, the guy said, "This is not a class on learning how to draw. It's about communication."
Yeah.
And getting across the ideas.
Excellent point. Wonderful. So the blueprint also, it is not just a drawing, it's a communication from one team to another. Or you're somebody who's doing this to someone else. That explains actually where things are going to be. Excellent point. Very good. All right. So I think we have some idea here, the analogy. And I think we kind of heard like big picture view, think and vision, I heard that. We create floor plans as well, as we talked earlier. Some construction documents, like what's needed in there. Development team and resources, want to identify those. Start construction and then occupy. So these are kind of like in the when you're building your home or renovating. These are high level steps. So how do you think actually this relates to you're building a course. Now remember a few words and few phrases we discussed earlier. Keep that in mind. We'll watch this quick video and then we'll discuss more.
Imagine you're building a house. You have all your materials, your lumber, drywall, plumbing, everything you need to start building. Let's say you've even built a house before. You know how to lay a foundation, how to build the frame, even how to wire the lighting. But this time, you're going to build this house completely without a blueprint, without a plan. Of course, blueprints would make the job easier and more efficient. You'd know where everything goes and in what order to build it. You'd know how long to cut your boards and where to leave space to run wiring. But this time, you're willing to spend the extra time and effort and hope for the best. Without a blueprint, at best, your house probably won't look very good. It might be difficult to navigate, or things might not fit where they were intended. At worst, it might be unsafe and at risk of collapsing. Building an online course is very similar to building a house. You'll likely start with a syllabus, but this is really just a list of building materials. You need a blueprint to plan where things go and how it should be structured before you start building. That's where a course map comes in. A course map outlines the topics, learning objectives, and overall student outcomes for the course. This includes identifying course content, required technologies, and assessment methods. A course map is a blueprint for your course. It will make it easier to plan, and it will ensure that what you're building is effective and how you're building it is efficient. Each course map is also a part of the larger program of study and is subsequently aligned to these program student learning outcomes. In this next video, we'll take a closer look at what's involved in creating a course map.
And if that voice sounds familiar, who do you think it was? Sean.
Yes.
Yeah, it was Sean who was online, yeah.
Yes. It was Sean's voice. It was produced by Sean Set.
Nice.
So, we heard that earlier. So actually think big picture. I think back here somebody said that. What's the goal? And that's where you start with end in mind. What you want your student to complete and accomplish and demonstrate when they have completed the course. And develop some measurable learning outcomes. And where it is easy sometimes when we are thinking in terms of, okay, I want them to learn A, B, and C. Okay, learning is good, but how do you know they've learned? So that we'll talk in a bit here about that. So is this like a think big picture and then it relates to the analogy of building a home? And then those outcomes, as we see, they come from accrediting bodies, we heard, from this national standards. Those are similar to what you were saying about getting a permit. It's almost like you are designing this course, make sure that it aligns with accreditation standards, it aligns with what the industry standards are, the national standards are. Create floor mat plans, that's like another part where you have your blueprint or the course map that you do. It's a blueprint for a building versus a floor map. Then you get into the construction document, which is about determining actually common program elements. That's where you start actually real world practical assessments. How do you know actually the students actually have accomplished those learning goals? Provide some practice. How students are going to practice so that they are able to demonstrate it consistently, that competency of learning outcome. Variety of reading and resources. That's another part. We know actually we learn differently. There is a certain content that could be explained pretty well through audio, video, or even graphic versus some other content. And it also depends on individuals too. So try to provide more options. So that helps with that. The development team. You establish a development team, which is yourself is the key player in that, which is a faculty. You are the subject matter expert. Your IDs may be calling you SMEs. If you haven't heard that acronym, it's subject matter expert. But you actually identify, okay, I will be working with an instructional designer, or I'll be looking at working with a quality review person. Just like in building, you have actually an architect. You work with an architect. You work with a builder. You work with an inspection team, for example. Construction work, that is actually where you work with your instructional designer to decide actually on which technology will work best for your course, and develop some shells and templates to help that consistency, so that in your dream home, dream course, so bathrooms are, if it's an office building at different level, the bathrooms are at the same location. You can have a different color and different floors, but that will help the users that come into your building to know where the bathrooms are.
Or you have a blue kitchen.
Right. Yep. And then prepare to occupy. And that's a phase where you conduct your final quality assurance or quality review to make sure everything is working. And then get ready with a welcome note to your students. Is this analogy helpful? Yes. All right. If you have any other analogies, feel free to share. Okay. All right. So, first phase, begin end in mind and develop measurable course objective and map your course. So, have in mind what are the key things that you want your students to be able to demonstrate. And remember, 3 years from now, that's a big kind of idea for your course. What one thing that your students would remember? Develop measurable course learning outcomes. As mentioned earlier, it's great to say that students will be able to learn ABC, but how do they demonstrate that they have learned? Because learning is happening in their heads. And then how actually are you seeing them? Are they explaining it? Are they analyzing and creating a report? Are they developing a project plan? How are they demonstrating? So that's a measurable. And course map, it's being handed out. Determine common program elements. And that's something which for consistency of consistent student experience, we want to agree on common program elements, which is what would be your, for example, if it's a discussion, you want to use the style of the rubric similarly across all your modules within the course. So students, when they get used to the rubric for discussion, the content and criteria can vary, but it's that, are you grading them using pass-fail, or are you creating actually a 3-level criteria rubric? So those kind of things, that common program elements will help to have consistency. Create real-world and practice assessments. That's another thing about. There is an assessment session after, I believe it's later today or tomorrow, that will go into more detail how to design authentic assessments. I heard earlier about the plagiarism. One of the way actually to mitigate some of plagiarism in online education, it actually depends on how you design your assessments too. How you design a question that or a assessment so that they cannot Google and find an answer. In other words, it's an open book question. They can find all the resources, but if they are applying that to the real world situation, they cannot cheat. Demonstrate and promote practice. That's another thing about, we heard practice makes perfect, but it was practice make permanent. So what are the skills, knowledge, abilities that you want students to have that permanent kind of understanding or habit of mind, for example. There was another term used earlier. So they provide them with more practice, so that they get to practice and then provide that feedback to them during the course. Curate a variety of readings and resources. We discussed earlier about providing them with variety of resources. And we have an OER session tomorrow, end of the day tomorrow. That'll also provide you with different resources, video, audio, case studies. It doesn't have to be a paper, always a paper or a textbook. So your ID team, that's where you have your WPU online ID team, as well as Joe is here.
Yay.
Joe is the man. We will be working very closely with Joe along this process. And I wanted to say actually that you probably are feeling actually a little overwhelmed maybe with information since morning, which is very normal. Don't worry about it. This is being recorded. You'll have access to these sessions later, as well as Joe is going to walk you through these steps. He's going to work hand in hand with you to help you brainstorm about the design of your course and what you want actually to accomplish.
Because if it's really important, say it again.
Instructional technology. And again, Joe and we have resources as well available to decide what kind of skills you are trying to build in your students and what kind of knowledge and abilities you want them. And then for those what kind of technology, instructional technology can be used. So if it's like you want to build community, there are tools like VoiceThread, for example, to build in that community. It's an online discussion forum where you can post your videos, audio, document in the discussion area. Using templates and common program elements, we talked about that. Conduct a final QA and get ready to welcome students. QA, once you are done with your course development with your instructional designer, your ID, Joe, is going to provide you feedback all along. But then once you're done, completed, now it goes to an independent reviewer who has never seen this course before. Why are we doing that? Any thoughts? Second viewpoint.
Eliminating bias.
Eliminate bias. Excellent. Good. And it's a UAT, user acceptance testing. In the IT world, that's where they use that in interface design world. That before it goes to a student, real student, it's almost like that person is providing you feedback as a user, as a student as well. And then we go, and you have your welcome message, and you go to the student. Any questions about these? You think actually that it's doable? You probably are already, those who have developed these courses, you use some or most of these already. It's just providing actually a little bit more structure, in other words, a documentation of this. Let's take a look at, so yeah, these objectives, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. How many of you have heard about SMART before? Most of you.
Try to avoid students will appreciate, because that's a common one we get a lot. Because it's a little bit harder to evaluate some of the affect. And I think people sort of sometimes default to appreciate when they're thinking about evaluating affect, but there are different tools and rubrics. So the main Bloom's taxonomy is really more about the cognitive component. But if you are looking to evaluate affect, let us know. There are other sort of levels that you can evaluate affect with as well.
Another classical one is understand.
Yeah, no, that's a big
We see actually everywhere most of the learning objectives use understand, A, B, and C. Understand. How do I tell you how I understood?
Yeah.
As a student. So yeah, so it can be very exact, and this objective are really actually your foundation for your course almost. Because if your well-written learning outcomes or objectives are, that will actually determine what kind of assessments you have designed, and that will determine how your learning activities are designed around that. So they become important actually with the specific measurable. You want to make sure that it's not something that is not measurable in an online course format, for example. Achievable, so students are actually able to accomplish that. It's within scope and realistic. It's also acceptable by standard, national standards or accreditation standards. They're accepted. And then timely, and it is actually, there's a time period associated with it as well.
This is doctoral student syndrome, you know, where you think you're going to get everything done in a very short period of time. So we want to make sure it's actually realistic and can be done in 7 weeks.
Bloom's taxonomy, you probably have seen this before many times, probably. So from remember all the way to create. I think we were discussing earlier in our business meeting, MBA meeting earlier today, more and more is happening with the AI. I'm glad one of the faculty here mentioned about AI. With AI and then those kind of like automation, artificial intelligence, most of the competencies that student will need going forward are going to be analysis, evaluate, and create phase level. But that doesn't mean that there's no room for remember, understand, or apply. Of course, that's needed, but the emphasis would be, and it depends on your course and curriculum as well. But be cognizant of when you're using a verb for your learning outcome, where does it stand? Where is it remember, analyze, or create? What do you mean? What do you want students to be able to do? To what level? All right. So did you bring your syllabi, or do you have the syllabi with you? We'll take probably, what time is it?
It's 2:30.
Okay. We took a break in between, so we can. No? Okay. Gary said no. So I was gonna share actually an example of a course map, which you will be working with very closely with Joe on that document.
You could show a course map.
Yeah, I will show it, but I was gonna ask you to use your syllabi to take one activity and then try to map. But that's okay. You can just take a look at it. You have a handout as well. So basically, the filled out handout, the larger, that is actually how it's formatted here. What you primarily, and most of faculty, you already are doing some way, a form or shape, or even thinking about these things. But this is a articulation. This is about documenting your thinking onto a paper. So it is about week 1 through 7, and then what are the weekly topics? What do you want to address in each one of those weeks? And what the learning objectives? What are some of the lectures or resources, learning resources that you are using? Readings? What kind of discussions that in each week you will be using? And activities and assignment and assessments. So that's actually the purpose of putting it in a format. Can anybody share why we're doing it this way? Or similar way? Why are we doing this?
Blueprinting.
Blueprinting.
Consistency.
Consistency.
So you will not miss something.
Yeah.
You don't miss
Or
something.
we won't have overlaps.
Very good point. Excellent. You're not missing, or you're not teaching too much of the same thing. The gap analysis is good. Yeah, that's precisely the purpose of this. Is to help you to see, critically see what is the content, is everything aligned? There is no extra information there that does not align to your learning objective. So that helps actually with your design and making it more streamlined program. And this is like a filled out example. So you have a hard copy here, and those online will send you via email with the rest of the package. This is, I know it's hard to read on there, but you have a hard copy of this. Any comments or question about this like mapping?
Keep in mind, this is supposed to be high level, so the expectation is then you would take, for example, the discussion where it's just, you know, a sentence or two here or even less than a sentence, just to give you an idea of what you're going to do. That'll get flushed out once you get into your actual assignment or discussion. This is meant to just give you that high-level overview. So if you've ever, there's a lot of people who are like global learners rather than specific. So they need to see the big picture before they can get into the details. And this gives you that sort of opportunity to see the big picture before you get into the weeds of the details of how everything fits together. And so it's good for someone coming in. Like you imagine if you were about to now teach this course, you can get a big overview of what this course is supposed to be about and how the weeks kind of flow together as well. Then you can go in and take a look at the details of what each assignment is or what the readings are, those kind of things.
All right. Any question about the course map? So again, the next with the construction documents, that's where you start actually thinking about your assessments, thinking about your learning resources. So you start compiling, collecting those resources. So remember, you start with the big picture view of learning outcomes and the map, overview map, and now you start actually building those based on your course map. You said actually that there will be a case study, or there will be an essay question, or like two discussion questions asking about inflation and the causing of inflation. So those questions, those real world practices, now you are starting to create those, actually fetch them up. What are those case studies? Are there any, you're writing them up or you're getting from somewhere? Procure your resources and create those at this phase. And that's where you could actually have some, if you want, some kind of like a guideline templates to do case studies, writing rubrics. So we have resources for those, and your instructional designer can help you with that. So your IB actually, again, as I said earlier, Joe is your primary IB, then, and Gannon and her team would be shadowing the first round of courses, course development. So there you have a lot of help. So it's you're alone in this. Please reach out to Joe and Gannon and as you're developing your courses. And QR, that's again, there are QM Quality Matter Certified reviewers. They will actually, and they are AP, our Academic Services team members. They will provide actually based on the rubric for Quality Matter, they will provide the feedback. And you will see that actually more in detail as you kick off your course development. You see that rubric before when you start building your course. Construction, that's where you start building your, working within your shell. Your course shell that we looked at earlier today, you get access to it, and then now that you have started with the course map and start building your resources or procured your resources that you're going to be using, now you start getting into the course itself and start putting it on each module by module, what are the learning activities, what are assessments, and you start building within the elements. And then the QA, and you get the QA about 2 weeks before the course start. So you have 2 to 3 weeks time frame to refine based on the quality review, and then get ready. All right. Any other questions about the process and overarching, like some steps here.
What are the things that are going to be sent to the reviewers?
What? It will be access to the course. So the reviewer will go in, log in as a student, and they will actually go through the course using the rubric for quality matters, rubric, and then they'll see if all the standards are met. And they provide a nice feedback and illustrate that. Okay, yeah, the instructions are not too clear over here. Could you add ABC or whatever there is? And that kind of feedback. Yep.
Are you reviewing subject experts?
No. They are. We don't want to say that they are subject matter expert, even though they have some background. But their focus is mostly on usability. They're not giving feedback on content. In real, if you go the route where you want actually your courses to be QM certified officially, that actually requires 3 reviewer, and that's a separate process. So that includes a subject matter expert as well as instruction designer. In this case, it's only the instruction, user experience feedback. Good question.
So do they need the course map?
They do like to see the course map as well. So
But
that's.
primarily they look at the content.
I'm sorry?
But primarily they will look at the content that is in the shelf.
That's right. They will log in as a student, and then they walk through the course to see if there are any broken links or there are some instructions that are missing. So that if they do actually like to see if there is a course map to map actually what the course map is saying, and to get a big forest view of the course before jumping in.
Are there any tools to check the links?
On the shelf?
I'm sorry?
Is the course map in the shelf so students can see the course map as well?
We usually don't put it in that, but as Carrie was saying, there is a hidden place for faculty where you can save. It's a best practice to save your course maps there. Because we don't want down the road in like 3 terms later when you are fine-tuning your course, the curriculum drift, they call it. So you start changing the little things. Original goal was this, and then now after 3 terms, the course is going in this direction. For your own purpose, it's good to keep updating your course map and then keep it within the course shelves.
Are there any tools to check links for them? Because
Yes.
usually
Crawl.
they tend to change quite a bit.
Yeah, crawl. There are tools available. You can go through your website to see if there are any problems. All right. Any other questions? Sounds good. We get 5 minutes break before our next session.
Who loves discussion questions? Who loves discussion? All right, we got 2 out of 40, so that's about my average.
Let's discuss about that.
Yes, let's talk about that. All right, so discussion questions. Most people, it's the bane of their existence, is what I hear a lot of the time, both as students and as faculty. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the purpose, some standards. We're really going to get into how do you create really good discussion questions. I cannot guarantee you I'm going to get every single one of your students engaged, but there are ways that we can increase the likelihood of them actually engaging with you. Then we're going to do some tips and tricks. So, all right, purpose. Why do we have discussion questions? Who cares? Participation. Big one, right? If you do not have some student-to-faculty interactions, guess with your courses, it's a correspondence course, it is not an online course, and your accreditation can change. So it is vitally important that you include some form of student-to-student and student-to-faculty kind of interactions in your course. Discussion questions are one of the easiest ways to do that. The other way is, of course, team assignments. So either way, there's going to be some kind of interaction, that kind of thing. So I like this quote, an online class should promote the right conditions for constructive thinking. So we really want to try and get students reasoning, evaluating, problem solving, decision making, and analyzing. So we want to move them just beyond straight rote memorization And we want to really get them thinking about and then putting the information that they're going to learn in your class into new context as well. So you really know somebody's learned something when they can take that information, put it in a different context. So I learned about this condition or this assessment. Now I'm going to give you a case study that's totally different. Figure it out kind of situation. So we want to have them do something new with old information. Some of the standards with Quality Matters, there's a couple of standards, so we want to ask students to introduce themselves. So here's standard one that you have in a lot of classes. I encourage you to think about this one uniquely for your class. So if you've ever taken an online class, when you go from class to class to class, what do you think everyone asks you?
Copy and paste.
Yeah, everyone's just saying the same thing again. And after a very short period of time, everybody's learned about everybody and they get bored with it. But you as the faculty member don't know them, so you want to learn. So I encourage you to make it a little bit different, interesting. You know, I've asked students, tell me something totally different, totally weird about you. I have had world Monopoly champions, champion weightlifters, all sorts of different things. And it's something that they hadn't, said anything to the rest of the class, but it gives you a little bit of a, think about why they chose that thing. So it's just a little different. I had some students make, I had them all go on to how to make a little animation of themselves, talk a little bit about it. So get them doing something different, get to ask them a different question, because otherwise that one gets super boring super quick. Next one, learning activities provide opportunities for interaction that support active learning. Who here likes busy work? Not a single person I've ever talked to actually likes busy work, except for Cashin.
I had some managers that like to give it.
Yes, that seems true. But why is something busy work?
Not here.
Doesn't retain.
Yeah, you see no value in it, right? And so a lot of what we're going to talk about when it comes to discussion questions, a lot of students will interpret discussion questions as being busy work. And the reason they see it as busy work is they cannot see the value in it. They have no idea why you're making me do it, except this is what we do in online. I have to discuss something, so you're making me discuss this. So the more value we can put in this, the more we can connect this to real life, the more we can make this interesting, the more interaction and the more supporting of active learning we're going to have as part of that. Third one, or as the QM standards, that we clearly articulate what we're going to have students do. So this is just making sure that your instructions for whatever discussion question you have are just written out clearly so that it's not, I have no idea what you want from me. I personally really like the standards from the Online Learning Consortium, and this one is the opportunities and tools provided to encourage student-to-student interaction and, of course, student-to-faculty interaction. So we really want people to be engaging with each other. And again, another good sign of a really strong discussion question is when students are truly engaging with each other versus just posting something as a response. So what is the difference between that? If I'm engaging with the material you presented, then that's true engagement. Like I'm like, I never really thought about it that way. What about this? Or I'm confused about that kind of thing. As opposed to, I wrote something and then you said something totally unrelated, or just it seems like I answered a post because I was required to respond to 2 posts. And I a lot of the time that happens, I'll show you in a few minutes, when it's almost impossible to write a response. And so we'll see the kind of question in just a second. All right, activity. I want you guys to not shout out the answers. And I have a tendency everyone wants to shout out the answers, especially my nurses, especially the first one. You're all going to want to shout out the answer to this one. No. So keep it in your head, and then just think about how you would answer this response. All right, so I'm going to ask you 3 questions. Just think about, if you were the student in my class, how you would answer this discussion question. Who is this person? Yeah, you see? So think, who is this person? How you would answer this. All right. Next example. What is behaviorism? I love this little thing. Watch what I can make Pavlov do. As soon as I drool, he'll smile and write in his little book.
That's a good one.
And then number 3, imagine that you're a brand new clinical faculty member, and this is the first day of the first clinical you've ever hosted, and it's your undergraduate pre-licensure students, and then one of the students actually has a patient who you selected for them decline care because of their gender. I mean, this is true of anything, you know, you basically have a client declining an activity because of gender. What would you do? Why? And I want you to support it with some research. Which one of these 3 questions did you prefer?
The first one.
The easiest one.
I get all of them as different answers. The first one is often people will say, hey, I know that one, that's easy. Anyone know the answer? That was Florence Nightingale. I actually had someone shout out someone's grandma. And I said, actually, no, she never had kids, so not someone's grandma. Second one, some people will like, yeah, I really like that because you're going to write a more detailed description versus just a single name, which is the first one. And other people like the last one because it's forcing you to think of more than one answer. Think about it this way. What do the first 2 have in common?
They had a picture.
Just straight down.
They're very closed. There is one right and everything else is wrong, right? Now, the first one is a very, very short answer. It's Florence Nightingale, 2 words. The second one is a longer answer, but it's still right or wrong. You're going to have students do slight variations on it, but at the end of the day, behaviorism is a determined thing. What's the problem with a close-ended or a right-wrong kind of discussion question?
Difficult for the responses, for people to respond to.
Almost impossible. That's where you're going to get the random responses that you're wondering to yourself, what does that have to do with anything? So with the Florence Nightingale one, you might get, yes, Florence Nightingale used to work in XYZ place and did A, B, and C. And you're like, I guess, yeah. But maybe that didn't relate to the purpose of the week. You know, maybe you're just winging it because you have no idea what to say. Same thing with behaviorism. It'll be right or wrong, and at the end of the day, students are going to struggle responding. And remember, you tend to write more responses than original posts. A lot of the time, people write the original post in a very narrow manner. And really, what at the end of the day we want to do is we want to avoid the bullseye. We don't want to bullseye this. What is a bullseye as well in this circumstance? Think of Bloom's taxonomy. Where is the bullseye?
At the bottom.
At the very, very bottom. You are only measuring straight up knowledge. That is regurgitation 101. And the problem with that, again, it's not meeting what you probably want them to do, and it's boring. I mean, really, did I stretch any of you by asking you the first 2 questions? But you get to the third one and you might have had to think about it. And I've had people say, I would have gone and sat with the student because maybe he was or she was upset. I would have never let this happen in the first place. I would have talked to them beforehand. You know, I have had all sorts of answers to this question. The ultimate idea is there's not one right or wrong. And you might hear someone else's response and go, I didn't think about that. But if you went and asked the person beforehand and they had dementia, they might not remember, you know, so you can start to actually have a meaningful discussion back and forward about what you would do. Maybe someone says, well, I would be terrified as the student if this was my first clinical. Maybe when you read it, you also saw that this was your first clinical instructor role, and you'd be going, I'd be standing in the corner crying. So there's a lot of opportunity for you to answer that question. Those are the ones that we want to try and move towards. And where are they on Bloom's? Application and analysis. You want to move up. You may not be able to get to create. That's a hard one to get to in just a discussion. But application and analysis are absolutely doable. And so this is an opportunity for us to really push the students sort of outside of their normal thinking with less on the line. Discussion questions are usually not graded at the same level an assignment is, right? So this might be an opportunity for me to also correct incorrect thinking. So maybe your student responds to that one of being a clinical instructor and they say, I would have gone up and yelled at that student and told them that they were weak. And you come in and say, okay, let's dial it down a bit. That's probably not what you want to do. But you give them an opportunity to learn and respond to your feedback. And then again, they can write more discussion questions and you can have an active experience as part of this. Students also can respond to each other a lot easier, and they also will be at an application and analysis stage. No joke, I was in one class, and the class was on education, and their discussion post was, what's the difference between an outcome and an objective? You wrote your answer. An outcome is, an objective is. And then responding to other people, and we had to write 6 responses and have 2 original source articles for every response that was published within the last 3 years. It took you an hour and a half for each response, and at the end of the day, I'll be quite honest, I don't think we added anything to the discussion because all you were essentially saying was, I agree. You were just doing it in a fancier manner. And because that's basically all you could say, right? There wasn't a whole lot more you were going to push out of people. And I can tell you, it felt like busy work, absolutely. But then if you can connect this back to your objectives for the week, if you can connect it to your assignment for the week, if you can connect it to what they're going to do in real life when they exit here. So that discussion question I use in a master's program when I'm teaching teachers or nurse educators. And I'm saying to them, these are some of the experiences you're going to go through. Something is going to happen on the floor when you're a clinical instructor and you're going to have to deal with it. How are you going to deal with it? Let's think about that ahead of time as opposed to the, as you're standing in clinical going, oh my goodness, what is happening? Why is this occurring? So it's a really good opportunity as well to give case studies, to give scenarios. This could be a great opportunity to give a scenario where where it was your own life experience as well. This is another example. So let's just say you don't want them to pull on their experiences or what they would do. This is another way you can do it while still getting students to give different answers. So here, from the readings, find a scholarly journal, highlight the key points, and essentially include how it relates to you or your field. Now this is particularly useful if you have an intermixed class, so you have people from multiple different professions because they can really learn from each other. This is how I would use it, this is how you would use it, those kind of things. But it's still very useful, especially if, let's just say you had 5 readings that week. We know people aren't going to read all 5 of them. Pick one. And then people inadvertently learn the major points by reading other people's discussions. And you get all that kind of thing coming through. And then people can respond again, well, I'm not sure I would agree with how you see that working for nursing. I might see it in a different way, etc. So there can be different ways you respond. What do you think might be another really good thing about making a discussion question something that relates more personally, something that you have to really think about, something you have to engage with? Remember it more, because you're attaching it to that cognitive memory you already have, so it's going to move into your long-term memory. Outstanding. What did we say earlier that you didn't want to have happen? People go online and buy answers. You just mix up your discussion questions. I have usually multiple that I have developed for any one week that all meet the same ultimate goal, and I'll mix them up depending on which iteration of the class, and I'll save them like in the faculty use section. This week you could do one of these 3, and you can change it up a bit. I also will require that they connect this to their experience, and if you ask them where they work and what their experience was in those initial Q&A, you can go back to that to see if it matches. So I have actually seen that occur. I have also caught students because I would randomly, so most of the discussion boards don't check through, turn it in. I had my faculty pull random, 3 a week, that kind of thing. Stick it in a Word document, send it through, turn it in, and guess how many people we kept catching. So you can, and I will tell my students, I will check this. So you are running a risk. And if you plagiarize in my class, guess what you're getting on the class? And that was the university we were at, you automatically got an F if you were caught plagiarizing. So again, your rules will be your rules, but the basic idea being, yes, we will check these as well. But it does make it a lot harder to cheat. And it makes it less attractive to cheat as well, because you actually can learn from this. If it's busy work, I'll outsource it. When it's not busy work, you might want to do it yourself. So, developing the discussion questions. So I really like this. The measure of the question is the level of discussion and participation it creates. And then we want to allow students to bring their own experience and their own expertise to exemplify the concept so that the discussions are not closed down by the first succinct answer. So like I said, the first person who answers the behaviorism question answered it for everybody. Now the truth is you could not allow people to see other people's response until they answer their own. That's a solution to the initial question. But at the end of the day, then we're not helping anyone with the responses, right? And it's not just the initial question we want students to learn from. We want them to learn from the follow-up. We want them to banter. We want them to go back and forward. So, establish some guidelines first. So we want frequency and timing of the communication. So when is your initial post due? Always recommend your initial post be due early in the week. Has anybody ever seen discussion questions where it's Sunday at 11 o'clock and you're like, hey, nobody posted anything. So nobody can respond if nobody posted their initials. So usually what we recommend is something like Wednesday night, you know, that kind of thing. 11:59 p.m. Eastern time. For some reason, nobody can understand noon or midnight, so it's always 11:59. And I do recommend time zones. You can have people across the country as well. Also, identify when and how frequently they have to respond to each other. Common is 2, but I've seen it as high as 8 responses. So there can be room in there. That's something for you to discuss as a program and even as a university if you have any standards, that kind of thing, as to what you would like to see. Response requirements, is there a length? I highly recommend a minimum and a maximum. Any idea why I recommend that? Yeah, you don't want to spend your day reading. Absolutely. Your minimum, because otherwise you're going to get someone saying yes or no, you know, as their full sentence. So I like to have at least a minimum. And then some people have said to me, I prefer to have quality versus quantity, and I'm like, I absolutely appreciate that. But for those people who aren't maybe focused in that direction, you can help them understand what quality is at least going to look like. If you have a discussion question that's difficult, what are the chances somebody could answer it in less than maybe 250 words, something like that. So not a crazy amount, 1-page double spaced, that kind of thing. But I also have a maximum as well. Why? Because I had a class of 15 high overachievers. And I was given this class at the last minute and said, here, teach this, because essentially our regular faculty member didn't show. And so I didn't have a chance to change anything, and they didn't have minimums or maximums for anything, including the assignments. So I got 30-page papers every week, and I got 15-page discussion questions. These things just kept going and going and going. And of course, the problem with that is I have never seen the discussion question that requires that much explanation. And have you ever read an assignment, discussion post, or anything like that, where the student throws everything in the kitchen sink at you?
Yes.
What are they doing in this circumstance? They are hoping you figure out that they know it, that they don't, right? Because if they did, they would have given it to you shorter and more concisely. So I forced them to be concise. And that is actually a very good skill to learn anyway. And tomorrow when we talk about assignments, I'll give you some examples there. Yes?
Yeah, but responding to posts that have no responses yet rather than responding to one person, so many of them responding to that one person.
Absolutely. These are all rules that you can certainly put into place in terms of establishing those clear guidelines. Definitely, those could be ones. The only thing with that one is you definitely need to make sure then that you have your initial post due early, because if you only have one person posting early, then everyone's going to respond to that. You also want to have, if you have any specific expectations, you know, if I expect you to give your personal experience, then I need you to tell you that, right? And any references. Also, if there are any expectations regarding number of posts, like you have to respond to a minimum of 2 of your fellow students. I'm not joking, had a faculty member who started deducting everyone in the class because they didn't post 12 responses. However, all she ever said was she had to do 6. That was the minimum, but she actually expected you to do 12. And we were like, but I don't know where I would have ever learned that. You know, I couldn't figure out that that would have been the case. So let people know is all I say. You know, if 2 is what you need to demonstrate knowledge or learning, then 2 is what you need. If 4 is what you need, then 4 is what you need. And guess what most people are going to do? The minimum. So if you want more than the minimum, then tell them to do more than the minimum. Because, I mean, honestly, we all would probably only do the minimum. Maybe we'll do a couple more if we're really excited about this topic. But the reality is most people are going to evaluate their scenarios and they're going to make a judgment call. And if you tell me only to do 2, then I'm probably going to do 2. So if you want 4, tell them to do 4. Or you could give a range because you're going to give a low grade down here and a high grade up here. Then you're going to get people maybe moving towards the higher ends. But if you don't let people know that they need to do more, they're not gonna. Grading criteria, this is where I said earlier, having a consistent level of a threshold. What is substantial? Where will I go from absolutely not to yes, depending on content, obviously. But do I have to explain? Do I have to have references? Do I have to, how deep does it have to go before I will make the substantial level? So that's a good thing to have a discussion about as a faculty. What do you expect? So that way I can't move from one class to the next and the expectation is wildly different. Because guess what happens to people in the first week of the next class? They all either tank or do really well because the expectation is different. And you really don't want that to happen either. You don't want to lose marks just because someone else is thinking differently. The other thing I like to make sure that you give expectations around this one here. How do you respond to comment you disagree with? So I encourage you to consider writing discussion questions that could be controversial. How frequently do you get the opportunity to actually have professional discourse? So in nursing, there's a lot of bullying. One of the reasons why I think, and trust me, this is only one of probably many, is that we never learn how to be professional, have professional discourse. I don't have to agree with you. The research may not even, jive. We've seen studies that say eggs are good and studies that say the eggs are bad, and you're figuring out whether you should eat eggs or not. So there is a lot of mixed. There could be no information on it, right? I can have a disagreement with you and it not land to blows. We do not have to get uncivil. Just because we disagree with each other doesn't mean we dislike each other. And it shouldn't be connected quite like that. This one discussion question is not you in your entirety, right? Not everyone sort of appreciates that. We get very, and it's not just nursing, but in society in general, people who don't like something, right? I heard one day that some people didn't like the way this one movie director did this one movie, and all of a sudden they're getting death threats. And you're like, it's a movie. Come on, guys. Just learning how to be professionally disagree, And there are going to be times in real life that you're going to have to professionally disagree with someone. Maybe it's your higher up, maybe it's your subordinate, maybe it's your equal. But you're going to have times you professionally disagree. And you shouldn't be standing up going, you suck, when you professionally disagree with someone. Trust me, that doesn't go over very well when you tell your doctor, you suck, dude, I'm not doing that.
Even if they do.
Right, even if they do so. we have to,
Your opinion.
yeah, we have to approach things with a tad more grace. And you're never going to convince somebody that your point of view is even valid if you turn around and say to them, you suck, you should believe me, right? But that seems to be a lot of what is happening in some of the social media that we see, et cetera. People are being very bullish with their approach. I have an example of this, unfortunately. I had 2 students in a hybrid class that I was teaching who went at it overnight in a discussion board. Now, since this was a hybrid class, they met first and last on ground and the middle online, and this was one of the online weeks. They went at it on a discussion board, and this was the middle of the night. It was like 2 in the morning. I wasn't even awake to police this. That by the morning, one of them had taken a restraining order out on the other one. I am not joking.
Yep.
You can't make this up, honestly.
Yep.
So when I say this is an opportunity to help people learn how to professionally disagree, it is. It's a really good opportunity. People need to learn how to disagree. It seems simple, right? But it doesn't work out as simply. So set rules. Set rules around what you should do if you disagree with somebody, and that involves not escalating it till the point of needing a restraining order. Because that makes clinical and class very difficult thereafter. Again, let people know if there are references needed. Let them know if their post doesn't meet requirements. So how do I tell you you didn't meet substantial? Now, I let students know if you leave it until Sunday night, you're on your own. You're rolling the dice at that point, because I don't have time to read it and let you know. If you do it earlier in the week and I see that it is not sufficient, I maybe respond to you, those kind of things. Different LMSs also have different tools. There was one I really loved where you could flag it as a yes or a no symbol. I love that one, but unfortunately most of them don't build that in. Only the student and you could see it, so they would know if it was substantial. But yeah. And also, when someone doesn't agree with someone, they shouldn't take it offline and start yelling at each other either. So I personally, as a student, had somebody call me up at 2 in the morning and have profanity because of a variety of reasons where they did not like stuff I was doing in the class, and they didn't like that I was an immigrant. But students need to learn how to be professional with each other's. You know, they're getting a graduate degree, they're getting a BSN. You can't talk with other people professionally. This is going to be a problem. At the end of the day, we're going to do the same thing we do for any of these creation things. We want to start with the goal. What is your end in mind? What are you hoping to get out of this discussion question? Because trust me, if you don't know, it will become busy work. So why do you care, other than they're making me? What is a goal that you can have from this? Now, there are a couple of different ways that I tend to look at my discussion questions. One of which is as a way to meet an objective. Remember, you might have 5 or so objectives for the course, and then you might have 3 objectives each week for a module. I recommend not going too much more than about 3, because every objective you have, you should measure. And if you got 15, you're gonna have a hard time measuring all 15. So my discussion question may be the way that I meet that objective. So that could be one way. Maybe I'm asking you something about the readings. Maybe I'm asking you to apply this concept to your previous experience, think about a new experience. I've given students my experience and said, what would you do? Good thing about that is they can ask me conceptual questions. Well, tell me about the environment, because maybe that would change my answer. And I know the answer to that because I was in that environment, as opposed to having to make it up or something like that. And then at the end, I'm able to tell the students this is what I did and whether I would or wouldn't do it again. So you can learn vicariously. The other way I've also looked at discussion questions is as a step towards your assignment. So who here has had an assignment where students had to do something early in the week? If they didn't, they weren't going to get the assignment done. Think of an interview. You had to go interview someone, then write something up. How many people have seen a student not open the assignment until Sunday night? And they go, oh, and they're then furiously emailing you going, oh, I didn't interview someone I didn't realize I needed to, and really, you should have looked ahead. There are times when I know I need to get them to look ahead. So an example is in a community class where they need to do some interviewing, because if things get pushed back, we get pushed straight out of the class. It's so tight, I don't have time for them to miss a week. So I would make the discussion question that way. Give me 5 questions you are going to ask your family and tell me why. And again, I say, each of you is going to have to do a different question, so I encourage you to do them early, because otherwise someone's going to take your questions. And so, again, as a means to an end, as a step towards your assignment, making them think about it early. Maybe this is a really confusing assignment. You've tried, you've adjusted it over the years, but this is the best way you can think to put it. Maybe have the discussion question where you can hash out some of those confusions early, so that by the time they get to the assignment, you can expect a better result. It also could be part of that, like we were saying before, the scaffolding of learning. You can help get this out early, discuss it, and then get to the next piece. We want to make sure that our discussion question is at the right level. This is our Bloom's taxonomy. If your objectives are at the application and analysis phase, we probably don't want our question written at a really, really low level. That's, again, where you're not going to get quite what you want out of it. So make sure it's written at the level you want it at. And then alignment. So not just alignment with the discussion, not just alignment with the objective level, but also with the content. Now, you can break it into pieces, absolutely. So maybe you're only aligning with part of it, but then that wouldn't be the full measure of your objective. But an example of that is I was working with an MSN program, and one faculty had a really great discussion question about working with a diverse set of nurses. And so if you're in the business world, think about working with a diverse set of employees. And their discussion question was more about working with a diverse set of patients or consumers. Similar, diversity was in there, absolutely, but not quite, because how you work with your employees can be a little different than how you work with your consumers. So she had the right thing in mind, but she kind of missed it a little bit. Or did she? Maybe this was a step towards it. So think about, could this be a step towards? Maybe the assignment is now compare the employee thing to the patient, the consumer. How would you engage with employees versus consumers? So maybe it's a stepping stone. So just be deliberate about it and making sure that you're aligning in the way that you mean to. This is one that I like, this one, Bloom's taxonomy, because there's all these tech tools outside of the here. Now, keep in mind, what is true today may not be true tomorrow. What is free today may not be free tomorrow. What's available today may not be available tomorrow. And what works today may not work tomorrow. So whenever you're using tech tools, you're going to have to be, vigilant in checking them every single time. But the cool thing about these, even if you don't use this exact tech tool, it can give you a different idea. Like if I'm looking at WordPress up here in the Create, it's because I'm getting you to create a website. That's high level. Think about it that way. And over here, it's a lower level. You're getting some quick notes, so you're just talking, maybe animation, that kind of thing. You can also do your discussion questions audiovisual as well. When are people more likely to go at each other? When they don't see someone's face, when they can be anonymous. You're less likely to stand there and say to someone's face, you suck. They do it online. And so having that A-B component, and it doesn't have to be continuous like it would be in a classroom like this, it can be asynchronous. I pull up my phone, I record myself answering that discussion question, and I post that on the discussion board. I highly recommend having at least one audio-visual one per class. It increases what students perceive as the faculty interaction monumentally, because they see you, they hear you, they know you exist. and that you're here right now in their class. You also get students kind of beginning to hear what other people are saying in other ways. As we know, what you write and write alone may be misinterpreted. What you say, you get your face, you get your body, you can begin to see how people are interacting a little differently. So I do encourage you to do that. It's also wonderful for accreditation purposes because you can prove that that was that student in that class at that time. So if you're looking at any kind of SARA things, that can help you there. All right. This is the handout you have in your bag about this one. And down one side, you have some examples, some options, some ideas on how to create it. And then on the other side is what we as faculty need to do. So on the one side, try to encourage students to be creative. Do something different. Think about things in a different way. Okay, so you're moving from this level of employee, floor nurse, store person, now you're moving to management. What are you going to do differently now that you're going to be a manager? You know, so something where they have to think a little bit. Debates are really useful. I like to get students to try and debate the opposite to what they believe. You're on the honor system, I get it. But trying to push people to think about what the other side of the argument is can be very powerful, even if they're only doing it a couple of times in their entire program. Forcing people to think about what the other side is saying is very useful. Open-ended questions, as we said, and I mean real open-ended questions, not fake open-ended questions. You know what fake open-ended questions are? What is behaviorism is a fake open-ended question when you think about it. There really is only one answer. Or, can I ask you how you're doing today? No?
No.
Instead, right, it's a fake open-ended question. You think it sounds open-ended, but truly it isn't. So we want to make sure that they are truly open-ended. So I will sometimes even ask colleagues, how would you answer this? And we all know the colleague who is the ornery one, who would answer it in the most obnoxious way possible. I go ask them, which means that everyone comes and asks me that question. I'm that one at work. So, so that you can see how it could be answered, that kind of thing. Scenarios are really good. This is your case studies. This is a scenario that I had as a personal experience. This is a great way to get in, again, those stories. Prioritizing responses. Students are really not very good at determining what they would do first. So even if they have a whole list of things, they might mush it around in a different way. What would you do first? Personalization whenever you can. Again, less likely to cheat if you have to personalize it. If you're talking about your dog, you're probably not cheating. Ethical dilemmas are really useful because, again, they don't necessarily have a right or wrong answer, and it really gets you thinking. You know, how many people get into really heated debates about, you know, the death penalty or those kinds of things, where it's very, you know, personal to their core beliefs, you know, that kind of thing. So you can get into some very interesting debates when you get into ethical dilemmas. Synthesis, so they have to pull a bunch of stuff together. So pull in an article and something you found on another website and tell me how they fit together, those kind of things. We want to do some more probing stuff, and I encourage students to ask questions as well in their responses. Because again, you're forwarding, you're moving forward the conversation by asking questions as well. Opinions, that one's whether you want it supported by research or not, that's up to you. And then anything with multiple answers. I will say this, the more restrictions you put on discussions, the less discussion answers you will get. So think about it this way. This is supposed to simulate this discussion. When you are asking students in your classroom what their answer is, do you expect them to say according to so-and-so? Quick, pull up a research article. We don't. Now, that may be something you want to do in your class, but just keep in mind, are you asking more of them or less of them than a face-to-face student? And is that important? It might be. You might say, yes, I want them to always have research. Other times it might be, you know, bring in just the class readings, I don't mind. You know, so a couple of things like that. On the other side, we need to give clear and concise instructions. Or otherwise, what started out as a discussion on dogs ends up on frogs. I like frogs. You want students to remain on topic. Again, I'm amazed at how quickly something that is very core, how would you engage with a patient in a caring manner suddenly turns into, what did you do on Friday? That was really cool. And I try to encourage them, this is not your social forum, so we don't want that going on here either. We need to be present, but not too present. And we need to have some Socratic questions and then also encourage that professional discourse. So Socratic questions, who, what, when, where, why, how, with whom, those kind of things. Push them. And I usually say, Kashif and class. Maybe Kashif's not going to answer me, he met his 2 response requirements. But someone else could, and it doesn't matter if someone else does. And then presence. So that's our sort of next thing, faculty engagement. How engaged do you think people should be? So I'd love to add something to this discussion, but I have no idea what we're talking about. Sometimes you might feel like that. This is one reason why we do encourage sections to be broken down into like 25, because if you get too many sections, it is really hard to keep track of a discussion post, because all of a sudden you're like 15 things down, even though it's only been an hour and a half. We want to post strategically. Have you ever had a micromanager boss? How many of you liked having a micromanager boss? Shocking, none of you. If you post too much, what does it feel like? You're just kind of lording over. And that's very similar. What happens then if you post too frequently? What do you think occurs? Students don't. They will not help each other out. They will not fix their own problems. They will not engage with each other if they think you are going to do it all. And part of this process in education is also learning to fix their own problems. So we've had faculty who had Q&A boards, and one of my colleagues had said, this one faculty member had said to his students, I'm newly married and I'd like to stay that way, so I am going to have to shut my computer down at some point, and so you guys can respond to each other, and then I'll come back on a certain amount of time in the week. And he was amazed at how frequently students helped each other out and solved their own problems. And that's great. But if we do it, and we're doing it all the time, they won't help each other. It's sort of a learned helplessness kind of experience. In addition to that, can you imagine if you're the student and the faculty members posted 15 things and only one person has actually posted anything initially? It is very frustrating when the faculty member posted exactly what you were going to say, especially when it just happened and you were about to hit send. That can be very frustrating to students. So we want to post strategically. So don't respond to every post, ever. I don't even respond to every student each week. I will make sure I respond to each student, every couple of weeks, that kind of thing. It depends. I mean, if people are getting in a fight, then yeah, I'm responding to each of those people. But, most of the time, we want to respond a little less frequently. Yes?
I think it's important to make a summary at the end of the week.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I mean, I've seen many different faculty where they hardly respond, and 3 weeks later they haven't responded, and the students are getting crazy.
Yep.
Yes. You met my dissertation, Jim?
So, I mean, there has to be a happy balance.
Well, my first one went with the person. Yes?
Do you have any suggestions how to keep the students from following your lead? I found that sometimes when I add a comment in, suddenly it's all going to be responding to what I said, and they start ignoring each other.
I encourage students, again, I will say things like, you can only respond, only one of your 2 responses can be to me. You have to respond to other students, depending on, again, how many you require. If you require 4 and I'm only letting you respond to me once, then that's going to encourage them to respond to each other a little bit more. Also waiting a little bit, not responding the first day. Everybody has to post their initial response is also a way, because they don't have you to respond to, so they have to respond to each other a little bit. Some tips, Also, as students begin to realize what is substantial at your program level, it's a lot easier to respond to an initial discussion that's good than it is to an initial discussion that's bad. So the more students get used to it as well, if you all keep a consistent level, you're going to have more students responding to each other as well. Hope that helps. Yes?
I also have a suggestion that I use is we have something called a class lounge.
Yes.
Where the students can come together. So what I instruct the students is, this post is posted, so please discuss on the class lounge what topic you're going to choose. So I'm not reading osteoporosis all the time.
Yes.
Or I'm not reading asthma all the time. So it depends. If the student posted on the lounge saying, I'm going to discuss this, then the second student who posts does not get the opportunity. And it has worked very well because then sometimes you're reading and they are taking content from another student and posting the same thing, because they get access to it. So if the post is on Wednesday, you post by Sunday because we end on Sundays.
Right.
Tell me what you want to discuss ahead of time so that you don't, and it has worked very well.
Yeah, I also make sure that, so I will even say that even if I don't have a lounge, but I think the lounge is a good idea, even if I don't have a lounge, I will say to them again, you can't duplicate topics. So you want to get your initial one in fast, people, because someone else is going to take your topic. So again, you can't duplicate. And I said, I don't care if they posted 1 minute before you. They got your topic, you got to do another one. So again, it encourages students to post early as well. But definitely, we don't want people, and I absolutely say, you copy someone else's work, you copy the textbook. That is plagiarism, and I will hold you accountable for plagiarism even in a discussion question. So making sure that they're very aware of that. So in this circumstance, what do you think? Is the faculty member posting too often, too little, or just right? Too much, absolutely. Next one, too often, too little, or not enough? None. Yeah, they're pretty much absent in this case, and this is where people start getting off topic and they're talking about frogs, which in most of your classes in this room probably isn't their main topic.
At this time they're exchanging communication talking about you.
Yes, they probably are, right, because I'm not even on there. Yeah, absolutely. So this one, not enough. How about this one?
Just enough.
Yeah, that one's about enough. One thing I always want to remind people is you're not just pushing people in, you also want to push people out. So you've got some people who are going to be too transactional, too narrow. Help them think a little bit more. Ask them a question, push them out a little bit. What would you do in an extended circumstance versus just answering, kid was having an asthma attack, I gave him an inhaler. Boom. Did you talk to them? Did you engage with them? Did you say, good luck to you? Those kind of things. So pushing them out a little bit more. What else did you do? So just right, or Goldilocks. And the evaluation, you can have them simple rubrics, you can have them complex rubrics. I have one group that has I think it's 8 or 9 levels and then 4 across the top, and they're very detailed in each one of the little boxes. But on the same token, when it comes to grading, it's a lot easier for them because every faculty member knows exactly the kind of thing you're looking for. And students will be using this from class to class, and they become very familiar very quickly. You don't have to go that extreme. You can go something a little bit simpler, but do consider having a consistent rubric, even for the program. It's fine if you have different ones with different programs, and that makes sense. There may be very specific things that you are looking for in different programs. And again, we're not suggesting the content would always be the same, but we are suggesting that you need to meet a certain level in order to be substantive. All right, all my references. All right, any questions, concerns, complaints, beefs, or rude remarks? And I don't want any from you, Caption. No rude remarks.
I think the idea of citations within the post itself
That's totally up to you guys. I've seen both sides of the coin. Like I said, in the actual classroom, you probably wouldn't be asking your students to say a citation, but this isn't in the classroom.
Like the
This is
original
online.
post, at least.
Yeah, and so some places will say in the original post you want things. I would encourage you, if you are going to do references, get it in the habit of using recent, relevant references. So I don't want something from 1980. It was a great year, but I don't want you to be citing something from 1980. So again, it doesn't have to be really specific in terms of maybe an original study or something. Because if you try and find an original study on basic information like what is a femur, you're not going to find it. It's really complicated. But if you want a reference, also ask them to write out the reference in whatever style you're using, APA, MLA, that kind of thing. Get them in the habit of doing it, so every time they do it, it's in the right format. Yes?
Do you give an example of what you're looking for or not? Because then everybody tailors it to exactly what you did.
I don't, but I have seen arguments for the other side. I tend not to because I try to push people, but I give extremely detailed instructions, and I usually keep a running FAQ list, because that way from class to class to class, people ask different questions every time. I just keep adding to that, and that FAQ list gets posted each time. So I have FAQ lists for each assignment, each discussion question, and sometimes other, might be just weekly stuff. And after 4 sessions of running the same class, honestly, people don't ask the same new questions usually the same questions. Plus, you know, if everyone's asking a similar question, I might need to change the question, you know, the assignment, or give that information up front. So I do have those FAQs. I also have tips that I also post when it comes to both my discussions and assignments. So things like, don't forget, you have an interview this week, you're going to want to do it early, you know. Or I say to students, what's the easiest way to lose marks in a class?
Not doing the assignment.
Don't submit something, right? Don't do the discussion, don't submit the assignment, or you'll lose your grades. What's your second most easy? Plagiarism, or I also say it's sort of a two for plagiarism, or only doing part of the assignment. Because there's usually sections to your assignments or your discussion questions as well. If you only do part of it, you're only getting part marks. I can't give you marks for something that ain't there. Those are the kinds of tips as well, because you'd be remarked at how frequently people will do section 1, but they won't do section 2. So I asked all of these discussion questions, or I asked all of these questions of my family. Here are their answers, but I didn't do the actual assignment, which asked me to interpret that information. And so I'm like, well, you got a 0 on that bit. So, you know, some of the tips, if everyone's struggling with a particular concept, you know, giving them that information. But I personally don't tend to give them examples. A few reasons. One, I'll be honest, most of the time I've not seen a perfect assignment. And do you really want to give an imperfect example? That's just my opinion. Secondly, I don't want people to be constrained by that. It's the same reason why I don't necessarily say to people, go look at your previous version of this course, now we're going to copy it, because you could do something cool. Okay, blinded by the light, Kasha. But that's a personal choice. I have seen some people who want to do that. People are so wild. Okay, that's the same as flicking the light on and off at Walmart, time to get out.
I remember those old days in library when I used to go like at 11:55 p.m. They start turning off the lights.
Yeah.